Hello, good morning, and welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast, hosted by myself, Greg Oram, and fellow Forest fan from across the Atlantic, Richard Spray. Good morning, Richard. How are you, sir?
Doing great. It's all I know of the 70s bands, the silky smooth tunes of the Eagles. So, yeah, I'm doing good.
Well, I thought we needed something just to, get us going a little bit this morning. It wasn't to be at the Etihad last night as Nottingham Forest fell to a 3-0 defeat to a Manchester City side that seemed to have rediscovered its mojo. Forest had their chances and will rue a Chris Wood miss that might have steered the game in a different direction before half-time. Forest play at Old Trafford on Saturday for their second match in Manchester in the space of 3 days and will hope to bounce back against a Manchester United side fresh off the back of defeat at Arsenal last night. Joining Richard and I to look back on City and ahead to United, we're in the company of resident Statman Danscape and the man with more risqué stories than Hugh Heffner's underpants, Paul Morley. Morning, Paul. How are you?
Good. I'm fast developing a reputation of sorts on this podcast. I know that. I'm going to struggle to shake off, but that's all right. Yeah, I'm okay. I'm good, thank you. I'm good. Do you know what? We've played the top 5 in the league away from home now. All out the way. We've got 5 points in the bag. So, we're on easy street from now on, aren't we?
Well, your reputation is one that I have cultivated for you a little bit as well. And you're a man after my own heart, if I'm honest with you. Dan, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. Tired. I hate evening games when we lose. It's like hard to switch off and, struggle to get to sleep a bit thinking about what we could or should have done. But back and ready to discuss.
Okay, so we're going to try and do 2 matches in an hour, okay? One or two of you out there, or one in particular, has been asking of us to keep our pods shorter. We're going to try and do that, but an hour seems about fair, but we're going to try and get through the City game last night and the Man United game coming up. So we're going to whiz through that. Don't forget to join in the chat and get your comments in. We're going to say hello to you if we can. If you're listening later on Apple and Spotify, howdy, welcome along. Thank you for tuning in and all of that as well. I want to quickly get the ball rolling quickly. We've got day 5 to do of the Advent calendar. So here comes day 5. Let's see who's behind door number 5. The fantastic Andy Reid. He joined the Forest Academy as a young lad and a year later turned pro, made his first team debut in 2000, going on to make 144 appearances and scoring 21 goals before securing a big move to Spurs in 2005. It didn't quite work out for Reedy in North London, and over the next 6 years, we saw him have spells at Charlton, Sunderland and Blackpool. But in 2011, Andy Reid was back in Nottingham at the City Ground and once again hitting the kind of form that we all saw him produce as a young kid. A further 119 appearances and 16 goals followed before long-term injury problems forced an early retirement. Reedy's connection to Forest continues to this day. He is currently the under-23s head coach. Another Forest legend with a wand of a left foot. The wee Irishman has secured a lasting legacy as a true Forest hero. Andy Reid is our door number 5. We're not going to have time to get into too much chat about him because we want to move on. We've got lots going on in the comments, so we want to quickly whiz through and say hello to Raf with us. Raf's there. How you doing, Gary Lamb? Bruce is here as well. Wake up news, terrible performance. We'll be getting into some of that as well for definite. Tricky Fred. The sound effects and songs on this podcast are what sets it apart from the others. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's what we try to achieve. We want to try and be a little bit different. So thank you for noticing and thank you for tuning in. Right, game last night. Let's get into it. We went to the Etihad. We thought we're going to get City at the best time in 10 years, Danscape. And it didn't work out how we'd hoped. Just sum up the match for us if you can.
Soft for us, I think. We didn't really go there with a plan to win. I think we went there with a plan to try and sort of do what we wanted to do and not necessarily or potentially play into their hands a little bit too much, which I think is how it ended up. I think if you're going to go to City and win, regardless of their form, you're going to have to frustrate them. You're going to have to wind them up a bit. And I think, it was like our second fewest fouls we've committed in a game and stuff like that. And against a team like City, I think you've got to go the other way. If you're genuinely going there with a plan to win, for a team like us, you've got to upset them more than we did. And we kind of never looked like winning that game, unfortunately.
What about you, Paul? How did you see it?
Yeah, we seem to have come away from that plan that we had earlier on in the season of shortening games and trying to stick in games to minute 60, 65 and then looking to change. I think yesterday we almost sort of... I was thinking about, I know we're doing this in 2 episodes about what team to pick for Man U. It feels like the team we picked last night was probably the team we should pick on Saturday, but I don't think we can do that now, given what happened last night. And last night, maybe we should have, been a bit more Liverpool-esque setup. It's easy in hindsight to say that, isn't it? I think, to be honest, I play a predictor game and with my mates every week, and I had 3-1 to City in the predictor. So kind of the game panned out as I expected it to, I think. Look, we'll talk about it. The Wood moment was kind of the where the game swung in that 60 seconds thereafter, wasn't it? Look, it wasn't our night, but I think again the fact that we're disappointed about losing against City kind of shows how far we've come. We probably need to just keep that perspective, I think.
And you, Richard, I mean, you and I are speaking all the time. Which you more than do my wife, I think sometimes. We always check in with each other, and you can sense that I'm growling because last night you're okay. I'm like, yeah, I'm all right. I'm just don't like losing, and even if it's against the champions, it's still not a nice feeling because we want to win all the time. And I think you were feeling the same, weren't you?
Yeah, I was. I was disappointed because we never want to give up points. I felt like we were high enough quality of a team at this stage to put in defensive performance, like Paul said, shorten the game, keep things tight. But for the most part, what you could say is that the statistics looked very similar to Chelsea. It just wasn't the defensive product that we typically are used to. That was the problem. Isolated performances like Milenkovic just didn't look like himself yesterday. Yates, same thing. Wasn't doing what Yates can do to try to create chaos in the middle or disrupting in the middle their flow of play. And so it just wasn't quite there. I think we didn't have many 7 out of 10 performers on the pitch last night. I thought Elanga played much better than normal. But unfortunately, I think Raffer and Gary both were kind of alluding to it in the comments that just the finishing product wasn't there. The quality in the final third wasn't there. And that's the unfortunate part. We definitely took it to them more than we did against Arsenal. We realized in the first 5-10 minutes when they were completely relentless in their attack that it was starting to trend that way. And then we sort of seemingly made adjustments and started getting a little bit more possession and then driving forward. And that's a good sign. I mean, we're not just going to always allow them to dictate everything, but it just wasn't there in the end. That finishing product just wasn't there. So disappointing, but not totally shocked.
Yeah, I mean, look, perspective is called for. It's Man City. Raf's in the comments talking about KDB not starting since September, and him coming back into their team. He was really ready for it. I think he was really wanting to put on a show like Odegaard did, perhaps against us as well. One thing that Paul you've mentioned, I think, a few times in the past week or so, or a few days, is the open play aspect of us not having a goal. I mean, Raf is saying that we actually managed more shots versus Man City than any other team than Liverpool, apart from Liverpool so far this season. So that's an interesting aspect. Gary Lamb saying, look, I'm worried about goals. I think Paul mentioned last night, again, over 4 games without an open play goal. So we had our chances, didn't we? So Pep, I keep saying Pep. Nuno can't put the ball in the back of the net. It's down to the players. And if Woody scores that goal at 1-0 down, and I think it steers us in a different direction potentially. But the wider question is on that open play goal aspect, Paul. Are you concerned?
A little bit. I think it would be foolish not to be. I think we've scored 16 goals now in 14 games. I think only Everton, Ipswich, and Southampton have scored fewer than us now. So you take that in isolation. That does suggest we have as good as we've been defensively. There is clearly a big reliance on Wood, like you say. And if he happens to not have his shooting boots on, then where does the where do the other contributions come from? So it is a challenge, and it's something we need to fix. I think Morgan obviously had a good effort last night. Kind of did all he could. That was at 1-0, wasn't it? And Ortega made a really good save. Again, that if it's half a yard lower or half a yard higher, does he get to it? So look, I think compared to the Arsenal game, as Rich alluded to, if you take the two games in isolation, the pattern of the scoring and everything was relatively similar. We definitely posed more threat last night than we did against Arsenal. So if you're looking at learning lessons and progressing as a team in two pretty similar fixtures, difficulty wise and ultimately result wise, we definitely were better last night than we were against Arsenal a couple of weeks ago. So I think if we're thinking of trying to take positives from it and thinking forward about how we solve this open play goal conundrum, then the signs are there. I think if we're making chances, then sooner or later something's going to go in off someone's backside, and everyone forgets about the whatever it's 6 hours or 6 and 7 hours without a goal from open play. So a bit concerned, but not to the point where I think we need to rip up the template and make wholesale changes.
So we played Newcastle, conceded 3 goals, Danscape. We played Arsenal, conceded 3. We played against City, conceded 3. So our positive goal difference has now been decimated. We're on a 0 goal difference. Still in 6th, I would say, because that Lake Brentford goal against Aston Villa meant that Villa didn't go above us. So still in 6th. As much as we're talking about our attacking play and not scoring goals, the thing that's helped us through the game so far is that we might have only been winning 1-0 because the scoring just, isn't free scoring, but the defense was doing its job. Last night was possibly the first time that I was really concerned that we looked as fragile as we have done since we've been in the Premier League. At certain points, I felt that Man City were slicing through us like a hot knife through butter, really. I mean, the De Bruyne goal was just a fine example of how that ball ended up to whoever it was that played him in. It's just, they were just going through us so easily. So as much as we've lauded Milenkovic as well, I wasn't happy with Milenkovic for their third goal. Doku was coming towards him. There was Milenkovic between him and the goal. And I felt he didn't close him down. He didn't, hassle him and hurry him and make it difficult for him. He was backing off. Jeremy Doku was running on goal, and it was going to be a finish all day long. I could see it. I said, he's going to shoot, he's going to score. About 2 seconds before he did. I love Milenkovic. Doesn't take away anything that I've said about him, but I felt he needed to do more for that goal. Was it a bad day at the office, Danscape, in your eyes, for our defence and for our defensive shape? Or are we now starting to see, the fragilities that were perhaps always there being really kind of put to the test against these really good teams?
I think we're seeing a certain type of team can still hurt us with our defensive style of play, which is to sit deep, to soak up a lot of pressure, to let teams come onto us. And I think Man City adapted to that in that they played Doku for the start, and we saw it against Arsenal with Saka. Is you can only sit so far deep before a player of that quality that's an elite at dribbling past people still causes you problems. And I think that showed again last night in that he got past us and into dangerous areas a lot. I think Man City looked at what Odegaard did to us and they thought, well, they had 1 number 10, so we'll put 2 number 10s and we'll do even more of that same kind of occupying the space in front of the defence. Again, because our defence drops off deep, it does leave a little bit more space in that area for teams to get possession and cause damage, obviously quite close to our goal. So I think it's the type of teams we're playing. I think, if you come up against a less quality attack, sitting deep, low block, whatever you want to call it, I think that works better than when you face a team of the quality, individual quality of these top 6 sides that are still gonna find a space for us. I think all 3 goals were soft. The third goal I'm actually not that concerned about. I think, 1-on-1, you're going to get those kind of goals when you're attacking, trying to get something out of the game. But I think the first 2 were really soft. I think in particular, the Kevin De Bruyne one is just a case of either Gibbs White needs to drop deep once he sees that Ryan Yates has taken out the game and just try and block that pass, or our centre-backs, who I think our centre-backs were too concerned about Haaland. They were like clinging to him all game, and that again meant that they were slow to react to any other danger that was coming about on the edge of the box. I think you saw that again. No one was quick to close De Bruyne down, and it took that while on the first goal for Milenkovic to sort of leave Haaland and come across and try and tackle whoever Gundogan, who was going into cross. So I think there were defensive frailties, but I think it's mainly down to their quality in unlocking what is normally a solid defence.
I was holding out hope, Richard, that after half time we would find a way back into the game, and for the first 20 minutes of that second half, we came out well. We changed the shape. So Ryan Yates came off, who has been getting slaughtered a little bit, if I'm honest with you. I mean, everyone's allowed a bad game. I think Ryan's been particularly good for us this season. So, I think because it's Ryan Yates, the criticism is a lot harsher, because didn't I always tell you that he was a rubbish player? Didn't I always say that you put a bad apple into a fruit bowl and it makes everyone else bad? Those kind of comments. It's like, come on, guys. We're playing against Man City here. We know that Ryan's got limitations per se, but he's been playing well for us this season. So maybe not his best game. He goes off. Morato comes on to make the back 3 that you'd argued for before the game. And maybe it meant that we were more solid through that central point. But I thought we were having a go. We were looking decent, and we were looking like we might get. And I said to Orlando, look, get a goal here. It's game on. And that's just before, in fact, they broke and Docky got the shot off that I just talked about. Do we just dust ourselves down and say, look, it's Man City, 3-0 away. Before the season started, we would have probably expected a defeat. This was never on the sheet as a point or 3 points potentially. So it is what it is, and off we go. Let's look at Manchester United on Saturday.
Yes, I would agree with that statement. I think that's the only way you can approach it at this point, because the end result was probably not too far away. I think Paul mentioned, in a predictor at 3-1. And I think we all probably hoped that the defensive sort of stoutness light bulb would kick in, would come on again against Man City, and we would be able to restrict some things and learn from our mistakes against Arsenal and progress back to what we think we're capable of doing. But like Dan said, I think what we realized is we're setting ourselves up to really hurt the teams in that mid to lower tier of the Premier League, but we're still not quite there yet from a talent level standpoint and even a tactical standpoint to really go toe-to-toe with some of the best teams. I mean, Liverpool's the aberration, right? We're never going to take away what the end result was there at Anfield. We can't dismiss that in any way, shape, or form, but we just haven't quite seen the same level of performance from a defensive standpoint, maybe a little bit against Chelsea, but certainly against Arsenal, against Man City, it just wasn't there. And that's not the worst thing in the world. It gives us opportunity to reassess from a recruitment standpoint and from how we set the team up. But I tend to believe it, as we're going to be talking about Manchester United, it feels like this was always going to be the more favorable of the two, because as you talked about, the way they set their team up, Man City, it was clear they were ready to prove something. They were not going to lose a seventh match in a row. They were not going to drop points in any way, shape, or form in this match, because they recognized where they were and the kind of form that they were on. And unfortunately, as I kind of was worried about, it's like, okay, is this the best time ever to be playing them given their current form? Maybe, but it was also probably the most dangerous, because they were kind of a sleeping bear. and that was evident last night. But I agree with you. Just dust yourself off, move on, learn from it, and get back to what you do well, and try to be a little bit more stout in terms of the things that we've done. Now, it doesn't change the fact that we need to find goals from other players, but at least from a defensive standpoint, we get back to what we're used to.
You say that. I mean, they were always going to come out. They came out fast. I think we allowed them too much space. We paid them too much respect in the first 15, 20 minutes. They had the ball in and around our box. They always looked like scoring. We came back into it in that second half. And like I said before, they weren't all over us for the whole of the first half. We had our moments. We had chances. We had a great chance. And so I don't look at Man City and think, you know what, they were the sleeping bear. They were never, ever going to lose that game. I think we helped them along the way, personally. I think Chris Wood missing, and I'm not having a dig at Chris Wood. I think he's been amazing for us. But, in isolation, he should have scored that goal. I think he should have put it away. And if he puts it away...
Well, yeah, and Alenga should have scored as well.
Exactly. There's a Alenga shot. So I kind of feel like we've helped them along a little bit towards them not losing the game, Man City, and certainly them winning the game. I just want... I want in a cold light of day for us to go, you know what, there's so many things we can be and should be doing better. These are professional footballers. And we were talking before we came on about, we're just not used to having the ball at our feet. And then when we do have the ball, we have 3 or 4 passes and get a shot off. And then we can see possession back. We don't have enough of the ball. But these are Premier League footballers. These are guys that, they're not new to the game. They should be able to retain possession. So, Paul, is it a case of the mentality striking? Is it a case of them thinking, shit, we're playing Man City here? They're so good, we better back off. Grealish was playing in a second 10, as Richard had described, I think it was. And we normally see him on a wing, but he was playing in more of a position that he'd played at Villa, where he was affecting the game so much. So adaptability, too much respect. I mean, I kind of felt if we'd gone for it and really got into them, we really could have come away with at least a point. I really do think that. I mean, am I being too over optimistic again?
No, I don't think you are. I think if you look at the way that City have struggled in recent weeks, it has been when teams have gone at them. That said, I think we've got to think about how we've been successful. I think against teams of that ilk, and obviously again, come back to the Liverpool match, where Richard talks about going toe to toe with teams. We've kind of set up, we've matched the setup in the Arsenal and City games and come out losing 3-0. Against Liverpool, we packed the midfield. Against Chelsea, we played an extra midfielder and we got results. So I think for me, we just have to accept that, our players are not quite... There's you mentioned it's Premier League footballers, but the Premier League is pretty much 3 leagues in one at least. You've got that top echelon. As much as we've been flirting with it, the reality is that we haven't got the players that week in, week out can perform at the level that top 6, 7 teams have. So we are very, very, I'm certainly very pleased to consider ourselves in that middle tier now, where we can go and get results at the top teams, but we just need to be a bit more savvy, I think, than we've shown last night and what we showed at Arsenal. So look, there's hindsight, is a wonderful thing, isn't it? It's easy to look back and say we should have done this, we should have done that. But let's, again, not lose sight of the fact that it was Manchester City. Maybe I'm guilty of it, Greg. Maybe I'm guilty of, being a bit too in awe of Man City and thinking that actually, we should not be subservient to them, but be set up in a way that gives us the best chance to nick something rather than take them on their own game. And I think we kind of essentially did neither. We had a setup, like you said, that suggested we were going to go for it, but we didn't really do it. And therefore, if we're not going to do it, then we weren't really set up to frustrate them either. So we got caught between a rock and a hard place. I think we didn't do one or t'other. We just sort of sat and we saw what happened.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's just frustrating when you watch a game and you see how they're set up, and I just know that we've got good players, and it is about those fine margins. You miss a goal scoring opportunity that on another day or every other day of the week you score. These kind of things do turn games. We are pushing the clock is pushing us along. It's time for part 1 of this.
I'm a Statman.
Danscape, the stat man is here. Let's look at the stats then for what you've got for the Man City game. Take us through this, please, Daniel San.
Yep. So the stats from last night's game, and this is looking at the kind of the opposite stats, if you like. So how difficult was the game for Man City, and how difficult was the game for us in terms of the other games we've played so far this season? And as you can see on there, this is against stats like XG difference, the number of shots, the quality of the shots, possession, carries into final third, crosses, and so on. Without reading them all out, as you can see, in terms of the challenge we faced last night, in probably 5 or 6 of those criteria, it was the toughest game we've had this season. So we faced the most expected goals against us. We faced the highest quality of each shot against us. We faced a lot of, I think the two interesting ones in terms of what we faced is the progressive carries and successful dribbles. And I think that's where we saw with Doku in particular, that was a specific tactic to break us down, because we sit deep and we're quite good at stopping teams like City passing around us as much as we are probably just trying to jink past us and get a shot off. And in terms of what we did well, trying to find some positives, we did cause them problems. We had a lot of shots compared to what they normally face. So as I think Raf said in the comments earlier, we were in the top 2 or 3 games that they've faced in terms of number of shots against them. And we carried the ball into their final third a lot, which I think comes back to the Elanga comment, is that he did actually do his job very well, albeit on the left, which is interesting mainly. But he did get at them and he did cause them a few problems. It's just we didn't connect after whatever his action was. We never connected that up often enough to get a quality chance off. And the one thing that was poor in terms of our side of it is the pass completion. You know, we were pretty scrappy when we did get the ball, as we touched on earlier. That's probably the easiest or second easiest game they've faced in terms of a team that can't string the passes together. That's it.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. We'll have some more stats from you a bit later on. Richard, just coming to you as we wrap up the chat on the Man City game then. We saw Callum Hudson-Odoi miss out completely from the starting 11 and not get any minutes. It's something that had been spoken about, that maybe he needed to come out and have a break, have a rest. And I'd talked about Jota Silva needing a run of games of starting matches, that is. I was quite impressed with Jota. I mean, he's a niggly type player, isn't he? He's the type of player that, I mean, I love him. You know, there was a glitch in the Matrix in the second half when Jota Silva fouled Jack Grealish, and it was almost like that Spider-Man meme. It was like, okay. But what did you make of Jota? And do you think it was the right thing for Callum to step out?
Yeah, I think so. I think we were messaging before, and I think Dan and I were talking about it being a good experiment to see what kind of what you could generate in terms of impact play from those two wingers. And I thought Elanga showed that. I thought Jota showed that. I thought he was slightly better. I haven't looked at his stats, to be candid, but he looked a little bit better in this match. I think there were still moments that were very Jota-esque, where he sort of gets a little bit out of control and frenetic and doesn't really keep his head up and actually be looking at what's in front of him. He just sort of tries to plow forward and gets dispossessed. And but I thought overall, I think there was some isolated moments where he probably didn't come back enough on defense. But overall, I thought he played actually pretty well. I thought he was one of the guys that availed himself a little bit in this match. And I think it's good that we're getting to give him a chance to continue to play, to get more acclimated to the Premier League itself, and to start to be improve as a player in this league. So, because I think he can definitely impact games, and we saw that on display yesterday, and certainly was there as well in the previous match. So, I'm excited for what he can continue to bring. And they did a right thing. He got him to a certain period in the match where he looked like he was starting to wane a little bit, and then he brings Sosa in, and I think that's a good formula.
Yeah, I'm firmly behind Jota Silva. We'll get into whether he should start on the game on Saturday. It was lovely to see Eric da Silva Moreira get some minutes as well in the second half. And, you know, I thought that was valuable for him, valuable for his development. I thought it was a wise move from Nuno to bring off Wood, Aina and Morgan, thinking, look, you know, we've got another game in 3 days. This one's probably gone. Let's make sure that these guys are safe for that game, and let's give minutes to the others. Taiwo got a decent run out. I know that we were talking off the off-air about Taiwo. Lots has been said about him. We might perhaps get into more Taiwo chat in the second half of the show. But look, I think we dust ourselves down. Part one of the Manchester experience is over, and we're going to go into part two of the Manchester experience in just a moment. Time for this quick advert break from the Cheese Trader.
This York shop is a cheese lover's paradise. The Cheese Trader is home to an array of fine British cheeses, not only selling it but offering an epic cheesy street food menu too. Guests can choose from a main dish and then select all the different types of cheese they'd like on top, alongside an array of other toppings. We tried their loaded fries and posh cheese toasties, both of which were absolutely smothered in gorgeous melted cheddar. We even chose a whole camembert to top our fries, which was so tasty, like a cheesy salt and pepper dish. The posh cheese on toast was some of the best toast we've ever had, with so many amazing flavours to it that perfectly paired with the cheese, tucked away just off Grape Lane. This is the perfect spot for a great lunch.
Of course, the Cheese Trader, Stu Freestone. He is the man with the cheese, and you can get your order in time for Christmas. Quote, Talking Reds, get 10% off every time. Like I said, he is super busy, so get your order in as soon as you possibly can. He was, of course, is our sponsor, but he was, of course, the provider of the winning shirt that we did in a giveaway last week, and of course the cheese. So I'm very happy to say that both items have arrived. So on the left we have Ian Alsop in his new Reds training top. He preferred to have the red shirt, so we got that over to Ian, and there he is. And Ian was at the match last night, and I know he's listening on his posty round, and I hope you still got your shirt on, mate, and it wasn't too much of a late journey back from the Etihad for you. So congratulations again to Ian on winning the shirt. We are going to do another giveaway in the new year, I promise you that. And Stuart Clarkson was the winner of the cheese, which a lot of people wanted more than the shirt. And you know, let's not beat around the bush. The cheese is great. He says, thanks for the prize, Talking Reds pod. Much appreciated. I'm not sure it will last until Christmas, but considering my recent cholesterol results, it should do. And of course, big thanks to the Cheese Trader. Really looking forward to trying these beauties. And there's a nice selection, and even got a few bottles of ale, I think, chucked in as well. So Stu, push the boat out. Well done to you two guys, and thank you for entering. Like I said on a next post, if you don't enter, then you can't win. So we are going to try and do more giveaways down the line. So please do get involved when it comes around. Right, okay. On to Manchester United this Saturday. So they finished as on the losing side last night. They were at Arsenal, and I managed to catch kind of the last half hour or so. And yeah, 2-0 result. They seemed to really struggle with corners that were being winged in. Declan Rice was putting in some absolutely delicious balls last night, really putting them in there. And the Arsenal setup was quite interesting on set pieces. So is set pieces possibly, Paul, an area where we might think about getting a goal this weekend? The open play stat we've been talking about, but actually from set pieces in the defensive sense, we've been really good this season, and we've scored some goals from set piece. Could that be an area that we target Man United on Saturday?
Could be, yeah. I guess that raises the JWP question, doesn't it? Which I'm sure we'll come to when we get to the team sheets.
Oh, no. I mean, you go for it. I mean, I was going to ask about just JWP.
Yeah, well, I don't know is the honest answer. Whether I pick him or not, I'm still making my mind up. But it's certainly there's a rationale for doing that, and there's an argument for having him in the side, given what we saw last night, as you say, and United's apparent frailties on corners. I think it'd be interesting to see what team United pick, because I think he's rotated quite a lot last night from his team against Everton, I think, at the weekend. And I'd be interested to see whether he does that again on Saturday. I think he probably will. It feels like he's in that early sort of stage at the minute where he's just sort of, trying a few different combinations, a few different players to really find his sort of formula. So I think it'd be quite difficult to know what team they're going to pick, and as such, where the frailties might be. But yeah, I think given we haven't scored for 6.5 hours from open play, so anything from set pieces would be welcome.
I hope that we go into the game and pay real attention to the way that Arsenal approached those set pieces last night. I think what I'm trying to say is I see set pieces as an area where we really can possibly have some success. So with that in mind, Danscape, 3 at the back, get some height back in there. Is this the game for that? I mean, I think it might have been Paul that said earlier, or one of you said, maybe the shape to start last night should have been the 3 at the back, and then going back to the 4 should have been the game on Saturday. Now, what kind of way around do you think it might be, and is it important to have some height at the back and maybe try and exploit those set pieces?
Depends what you want out of the game, doesn't it? I think that was my feeling after last night's game. Is what did we actually want out of that game? It felt more like Nuno was sort of happy for us to do what we do and see what happened, as opposed to thinking, right, we absolutely need 3 points here. How do we specifically go about getting 3 points from this opposition? So I still expect that we will stick with our tried and tested back 4. But you're right, adding Morato in there as that third centre-back would give us more threat from set pieces. I think we're happy with the delivery on set pieces at the minute, whoever's on the pitch, Elanga, Anderson. It's just a case of, probably trying to do it all on one day, as opposed to having good deliveries one day and getting into good positions another day. So it's definitely an avenue for us. On Man U as a team, they're almost like the sort of upper half version of Southampton so far this season. Obviously, that might change with a change in manager, but they're very much obsessed with possession, and they're very good in possession, but they're very naive at the other stuff. They are naive at set pieces. They don't seem to have that dirty way of winning a game. They are, they do what they do, and I think they will still have a lot of the ball. We'll still have to deal with that and the energy we need for that. But I think they're more naive than the likes of Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal. So I think set pieces, niggly stuff, just we can hurt them that way. Some of the dark arts or whatever you call it.
Richard, last night, just going back to that briefly, we saw Ola Aina with his throws, and that caused a couple of moments in the defence. Morato coming up in the second half. There was one that Milenkovic got a knock on, and Moreno, who had a good game last night, he was a really good outlet for us, and he was driving down that left hand side. He got in and nearly got his toe onto something. So where are you at then? I know that you were championing the back 3 aspects for City. Would you like to see it on Saturday?
No. And I'll make 2 changes. Yeah.
Okay,
thanks
for coming.
Yeah, there you go. That's the kind of answer you're going to get at 5:23 in the morning, right? I would go with the same lineup structure, but I would take Yates out, and I would move Dominguez in his place, and I would put Anderson back in. I think that the one concern you have about that, I guess, is what Dan's brought up, which is where's the coverage going to come from in the case of someone getting injured. But I think that's where you can possibly bring Yates in, because the thing I like about what Dominguez does, and I think Paul was the one who brought this up in our chat. When you have teams like that with the kind of quality on the ball that they have, with the kind of pace and movement that they have, the frailties of a Ryan Yates becomes very evident in a pairing with Dominguez, because he just doesn't have the athleticism to keep up with some of those guys. In isolated moments, he can probably provide a bit of physicality, but unless I'm missing something, I don't think there's a lot of physicality in the middle of the pitch against a team like Manchester United. Even you're going to want to try to match them in terms of athleticism, and so I think you bring Dominguez in for Yates, move him over, bring Anderson in, and I think outside of that, Moreno's great at what he does, which is moving the ball up the pitch, but I think what he does lack still is the ability to be stout against very athletic, pacey. Again, guys that are good on the ball and shifty on the wings. And so he still struggles a little bit defensively. He got turned around a few moments last night, which you've seen happen previous matches. So I could make the case potentially for a guy like Nico Williams. But as Dan's mentioned before, he's a little bit different style of player. So probably just keep the back 4 as is. But that's personally what, if you're asking me, what my lineup would be, it looks like that.
So what's on the screen is what you'd go with, which is Moreno
Elanga.
left back and Aina right back, Murillo, Milenkovic in the centre-backs, Anderson in with Dominguez in the midfield, Elanga left, Jota Silva right, Gibbs White in the 10, Chris Wood up top. Richard, last night we saw Anderson start on the bench, which is something, again, I don't want to do that I said this and I said that kind of thing, because we all say good things. But I think I think Anderson might start on the bench and share the minutes with Morgan. And that's actually what transpired. And I think it was probably the right thing to do. I agree with you. I want to see Anderson and Gibbs White start this game. I think that we'll have more ball than we did against City. But, you know, are you still leaving Callum Hudson-Odoi on the bench then? Richard?
I would. I don't know what it's at, if it's a confidence issue. I mean, I think Dan spoke about the statistics, and he was one of the better players from a shot creating action standpoint against my brain just went blank. Ipswich. Was it Ipswich? I can't remember, man. My brain. Yeah, he didn't look as refined in terms of on the ball as he normally is. He was losing control of the ball a little bit more than normal, dispossessed a little bit more than normal. Wasn't quite being as confident in terms of engaging the opposing defender and being willing to work around him and do what he does, which is cut in and create opportunities and maybe suck some defensive players to him to open up space for somebody else. He didn't quite do that enough. He just looked like he lacked the confidence. And so I think by giving him a couple of run of games where he can just sort of settle down, come back and a little bit more energized is a good idea. But I really liked what we saw from Alanga on the left yesterday. I thought he was a lot more, in comparison to Callum, he was a lot more confident in the ball. And as Raf keeps alluding to in the comments, his set piece delivery is actually really good. And so that's another aspect of his game that I like, that he's refined in conjunction with the kind of pace and the kind of attacking prowess that he can have when he's on his game. And so he looked a little bit more on his game last night. So I'm interested to see how that continues to progress. Maybe he drops back to what he's done before and that inconsistency that we've seen, but I hope that's not the case, because I think a pairing with him and Jota is a good balance.
Okay. Paul, over to you then. Any changes that you'd make to this team that's on the screen at the moment? Anyone that you think really needs to come in, or are you happy with the shape? Are you happy with the personnel?
I'll tell you what would be great if the Premier League could had a rule, in a handicap rule, that for the away team get 12 men for 45 minutes, because you stick Yates in the middle of that, and that's perfect. Perfect lineup, isn't it? Would I make some changes? Yes, I would. I would change the shape slightly to a 4-3-2-1, or even a 4-4-4. Not 4-4-4. That's not 15. 4-4-1 maybe, or 4. Let's live as that for a second, and drop Anderson out to the left instead of Silva, and bring Yates instead of Silva. And you've got that Christmas tree type formation, but perhaps with, when I mentioned 4-4-1, almost Gibbs White dropping deeper, and then Alanga almost having a bit of a free sort of Rob Way can drift from left and or right, depending on where the ball is. Almost he sort of switches wings, and whichever side he's not on, maybe Anderson or Dominguez sort of pops up on the other side. So yeah, the reason I think that, I just think we need to go back to having an extra body in midfield away from home. I just think, given what's happened at Arsenal, and I know United are not Arsenal and City, I get that, but almost a bit like what Nuno said ahead of the Ipswich game, just kind of go back to basics, shore ourselves up, make sure we're in the game. And I think and this is where I think Yates, as Rich alluded to, and it's not just Yates, the whole, 80% of Premier League footballers would struggle going head to head in a two in midfield against Odegaard and co and De Bruyne and co. So I think it's harsh to single Yates out, but ultimately I think when we're playing against the very, very best teams, he does struggle when we're in the two. So where we used to have success against the likes of McAllister and Fernandes at Chelsea, he was part of an extra body in there that gave him license to go and sit on someone. And if he could do that against Bruno Fernandes and really wind him up on Saturday, but with Dominguez and Anderson around him, still doing the legs, tracking back and filling up the holes in front of the defence, whilst Yates is busy winding Anderson up, that for me I think is the template that I would go with.
Okay, Danscape, over to you. We've got the kind of Christmas tree formation there, which is obviously interchangeable with Yates coming back in. So Anderson, Yates and Dominguez across the midfield. Alanga, Gibbs White kind of sitting in behind Woods. Where are you at with the team shape and the formation, buddy?
Don't know, really. I really don't know. It's a tough one, isn't it? On the back of, it's a tough one on the back of these other two games where we've not looked particularly strong going forward. You're trying to find a way of creating a bit more. But I think one key thing is having Anderson on the pitch, because I think Casemiro is easy to dribble past, and Anderson's very good at dribbling past people. And I think that in itself could unlock the door a few times. And I also think going the other way, Mainu, if he plays, is sort of good at that side of it. So, and Anderson's good at tackling those kind of players. So I think Anderson's essential. I think we've obviously got that record of not picking up points away from home or a win away from home without Yates being involved somewhere to try and maintain. So it's a tough call between Yates and Dominguez. But I think if I was going there to get points, I would be going for 4-4-1-1 to start the game. I would be going back to effectively Dominguez playing wide right, Anderson playing wide left, and if effectively you've got Yates and James Ward-Prowse in the middle. And that is replicating the Liverpool setup. I'm not sure, is that replicating the Chelsea setup as well, I think? Because I think we downplayed that Chelsea result. If you look how good Chelsea are now, to get a point away there and keep them very quiet until obviously the sending off, I think that was also a good away performance. And that's the same, basically the same formula. So I think if I was going there to get points, I would start the game like that, and I would keep them quiet. And I would expect that they'll make a couple of mistakes in midfield that we can exploit with Anderson and Gibbs-White linking up. You know, Anderson's the player from that midfield to really jump forward and support the attack then.
Okay.
Yeah, Chelsea was a 4-2-3-1, or by the way.
Okay.
But in terms of players,
screen,
it was similar to that, was it?
I can't remember. So I just wanted to quickly make sure people know what we've got on the screen. Anderson left, Dominguez right, Yates Ward-Prowse in the midfield, like a 4 across with Gibbs-White slotting in behind the Wood. And to be honest with you, that was the team I was thinking as well. That I think packing the midfield in that kind of sense would be where I'm at. As much as I want Jota to start again, I just feel that for this game to try and secure at least a point, that we start like this. I'm not saying we obviously end like this, because 5 subs can mean you can twinkle about as much as you want to do. So I think going into the game with a midfield that has the ability of Ward-Prowse in it, might be time for him to come back in. Yes, Alanga's been good on dead balls and set pieces, but Ward-Prowse can take that job on. Anderson and Gibbs-White, they need to play in the same team against the right opposition. So I think this is a game for that. I want to see something more from Chris Wood. Again, he can be a little bit static sometimes. I know he can link up play, and he has got the ability to drop deep and leave some gaps for runners. We don't really have that kind of aspect in terms of runners in this lineup. So I expect later on Elanga and Hudson-Odoi to come on. I expect to see Hudson-Odoi in this game. But you know, again, it's a pick 'em, isn't it? It's we could spend all day talking about, well, do this and we should do that, and we should do this and we should do that. But ultimately, you know,
I think
go on.
Just to say one thing on that midfield is that they don't have that physicality that Arsenal and Man City have, which is why I think Ward-Prowse is more of a bet for this. If you've got Ward-Prowse against Casemiro and Eriksen, then you've got more of a chance of Ward-Prowse doing his job, as opposed to trying to go against Thomas Partey and Rice and players like that in that midfield. So that's the only reason I think for this game he could do his job that he did against Chelsea and Liverpool.
Yeah, I'm hearing you, and I'm tending to agree with you. Okay, time for part 2. I'm a Statman. Okay, Dan the man with the stats. Let's look at what you got for us for the Manchester United game.
I feel like I'm back in the 90s. I used to hear that song every day, and it's back to that now. So this is comparing, obviously, Forest and Man United, just looking ahead at where they rank on certain stats in the league. So I think the thing that jumps out of me in terms of like goals for and against and clean sheets is that actually both teams are quite good defensively. Man U are probably the first team we've faced in a while whose defensive record is as good, if not slightly better than ours. So maybe this is the dreaded 0-0 game, which has to happen at some point. But in terms of goals for, you can see that we're now in the bottom 20 percentile in the league, and they're actually in the bottom 30 in terms of goals scored. So it's not a game where you go into it expecting a lot of goals based on the stats and the numbers so far. In terms of the sort of home and away record, it's pretty evenly matched in terms of us scoring away from home and them scoring or defending at home and so on. The only thing I would say is the chances when we play away, we limit teams to few chances, but we've actually started conceding those chances now, whereas in the past we were kind of getting away with it. I think that's what shows up there because our XG is good, but our goals against has now dropped into like a bottom half away team. And then in terms of I've picked out some interesting stats where the two teams differ. So possession, as I touched on, we are now the lowest in the league for possession. Man U are actually in the top the top 45% there. Sorry, 35%. So they are a possession-based team, and they're in the top 20% for short passes. They love to just keep the ball, pass it around. In the past, again, these stats might change because of the change in manager, but that's very much the opposite to us. And you can see in terms of how the two teams attack the final third that shows up as well. So they're in the top 30% for passes into the final third. We are at the bottom in terms of passing into the final third. But where it levels out is carries into the final third, which is Hudson-Odoi, Elanga getting hold of the ball and driving forward as opposed to retaining possession as such. They play a lot of through balls, which is something we haven't faced for a while, I don't think, and something we certainly don't do. But against us, because we sit deep, they won't really be able to do that. So it'll be interesting to see how that limits them in terms of goal threat. Neither team cross into the box a lot, both very much in the bottom two for that. XG per shot face, we're actually still the best team in the league, despite our recent results. For the kind of quality of each chance we concede is still the lowest in the league. And if you flip that with Man United, for some reason, when they give away a chance, it's a very high quality chance. They are bottom of the league for that. So I don't know. I've not seen enough of them to know why that is. But you would think we're going to get one or two quality chances that could decide the game. And then tackles in attacking third, I think just shows how far the teams press up in defence. Again, we are bottom of the league for that. So we sit the deepest. We don't engage teams in that attacking third, but they're actually in the top 10% for that. So it will be they will put pressure on us in our defensive third to get out of. But again, that's why I think the likes of Anderson, if we can just jink away from them, we could get into the space to exploit. And then the final one is the goalkeeper. Like they've got the best goalkeeper in the league if you base it on the post shot XG statistic. So yeah, just see how good he is. Despite his shaky start for Man U, he's actually turned out to be a decent keeper.
Yeah, I'm not his biggest fan, but he has certainly settled down. Richard, the last time we beat Manchester United at Old Trafford was the 17th of December, 1994. So we're literally going to be almost bang on 30 years since we beat Manchester United. It was a 2-1 win. If memory serves, I think it was Stan Collymore and Stuart Pearce that scored the goals. So we're going into this game with another one of those hoodoos or big records hanging over us. And obviously in the last 30 years, we haven't played Man United a bunch of times, and certainly not at Old Trafford. But we come close. Certainly last year, we really kind of had that fast start. We went 2-0 up after 6 minutes, and Willy Bolly scored a goal, and I was as elated as Danscape is on an everyday basis about Willy Bolly. So is it time, Richard? Is it time? Can you see it happening for us on Saturday?
Yeah, much to my brother's dismay, I'm going to say we're going to win 2-1. I think to Dan's statement, it's a very tight matchup, so or 1-0, something in that vein. Maybe we get a late goal or something like that. Maybe this is the game.
Well, I want your score prediction, so which one's it going to be?
Okay, I'm going to say 2-1. 2-1 Forest.
Okay. Did you want to... I interrupted you whilst you were expanding on your.
No, I don't have anything to elaborate. Nothing salient to provide beyond that. I want to see a Taiwo goal though. Get him some confidence back. Well, probably won't happen, but
I think we've got a little bit of a delay on my microphone reaching you at the moment, so we're nearly out of time anyway. So I'm going to move on to Paul and ask you for your score prediction. Is it going to be 30 years later we can finally get the win?
I remember that game. It was 2 days before my 16th birthday. I remember it very, very fondly back in 94. Are we going to repeat that? I don't think so.
We're going to get another story then.
And
Yeah, I was just thinking. I dread to think how
no,
it's
no.
celebrated.
Other than just remember listening to it with would have been Martin Fisher and Andrew James on Radio Nottingham back in those days before Colin Frey's days even. So yeah, no, I don't think we're going to win. I do think we are capable of coming away with a point. I might not put this on my predictor app, but I'm going to go for 1-1.
Okay, so Richard is a 2-1 win for Forest. Paul is a 1-1 draw. Danscape, what you saying?
Also, good memories of that 94 game, or at least I think I do anyway. I was younger than Paul, I think, but I sort of seem to remember being in the car listening to it and probably having a McDonald's or something and just hearing Collymore score. And like, I've seen the memories of sort of being like a really surprise, great day. I think, I mean, I feel like my challenge is to predict a 0-0 for us at some point because no one ever predicts 0-0 and we don't actually have many of them. But based on the numbers that have just been shown there, I think, and based on the fact that these three teams have all had the two teams have had 3 games in a week, the changing players are tired and all that doesn't bode well for being a great, exciting game. So I think this could be the 0-0.
Okay, well, I'm not quite sure if I'd take a point now. I mean, a point at Old Trafford is traditionally a good result, I would imagine. But I think they are in transition. The new manager's there. He's done okay since he started. They did lose last night. We lost last night. Both teams are going to want to come out and certainly go for the win, I think. But I'm with you, Dan. I think it's going to be a draw. I'm going for Desmond. I think it's going to be 2-2. So I'm hoping that Morgan Gibbs-White is going to be on the score sheet on Saturday. I feel like it's time for him to score. I also think we're going to get an Elliot Anderson goal. He's never scored a Premier League goal. He never managed to get one for Newcastle. So I'm going to say Desmond 2-2, and it's going to be Gibbs-White and Anderson to score the goals. Okay, we're just about out of time. A few people joining us late. Patch Adams in the comments. He says Mainly and Ugarte will be United's 2 midfielders. Wolfie from Forest Fan TV. Afternoon. Hope you're well. Wolfie broke the team news yesterday. Sent me a WhatsApp saying, "Oh, this is the team. I've got it on good authority. It's confirmed," and it was the team. Wolfie. So he's definitely got some inside knowledge. But I have to ask you whilst you're here. You know, I saw you did tweet it out as well, and I know that people aren't looking at X and so forth, but I wonder why you do that. I wonder why you do tweet out the team news that you've got confirmed a few hours before the match. Not something I do. I love you dearly, Wolfie, but 1 or 2 people are questioning why you're willing to put out to the masses the team news if you've got it confirmed or not. But I'll just leave that question hanging there. Pep was watching. Was he watching? Is that why we lost? Because Pep was watching. I reckon he was watching. And he saw that you broke the team news early, and that he thought, you know what, I'm going to set Grealish in there, and I'm going to put Doku. I'm going to put Doku on there. So you never know who's watching. Anyway, we are just about out of time. We've done it. We did it, guys. We managed to get a preview and a review into the same episode, and we're just not quite on the hour mark. So we are going to quickly go around the panel. Any final thoughts you want to say, Danscape?
I think Gary asked in the chat about Morato's clean sheet. He did get to it. He got to 90. What was it on there? 95 minutes he got to before that goal went in. So he did achieve his 90-minute clean sheet. So that's one positive out of last night. The other thing I'd say is we need our own KDB acronym going forward, which is keep doing basics. Let's get back to that.
Keep doing the basics. I love it. KDB. Paul Morley, final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Actually, I'm going to leave something hanging for you guys to pick up after the Man U game, actually, and something to give us all some optimism, irrespective of what happens on Saturday. So, our next 3 games after Man U are Villa, Brentford, and Spurs. And given the way fixtures fall and other commitments that some of the other teams have got over those 3 games, we've got 19 days worth of recovery time for those 3 games. And the opposition combined have got 11 days recovery time because of matches that they have got in between or shorter turnaround times. So that's something I think which may well play into our hands as we go towards Christmas after this weekend. Just leave that thought hanging, and maybe that's something to pick up next week.
Yep, thank you for that. Very interesting. Richard, my brother from another mother over in Oklahoma. How's your day looking ahead of you? Give us your final thoughts.
number of meetings in front of me, so that's exciting. Obviously, I'm firmly on the train. I think we're going to win, and I honestly exercise those demons, get a win away at Old Trafford, which we haven't gotten in a long time, like we did against Liverpool at Anfield, and we're going to continue to keep ourselves above that line in the European Dream Tracker. So that's where we're headed. I'm gonna go full Greg Orham and be prophetic and say it's going to happen.
It is going to happen.
Bless you guys and your predictions, and you're probably right, but I'm gonna stay confident here.
Okay, wasn't our night last night, but we dust ourselves down. The team are at Old Trafford on Saturday against Manchester United. We think that we've got a chance of getting at least a point, and anything on the road in the Premier League is a valuable point at that. Following that, we'd be back home against Aston Villa. We've got to start picking those points up to stay on the European Dream Tracker. Tune in to us on Sunday when we do the post-match review. And till then, we'll be back with another Talking Reds episode following the Old Trafford game. See you soon.